Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman with the 151st Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We have a lot of sad news today and a lot of hard stuff to deal with. We are in our first hour going to start with a poem from our laureate Mimi German. We're going to talk about the fight for democracy in the small town of Waldport, Oregon, on the Pacific coast. In the second half hour, we're going to deal in general with preserving what's left of democracy in the 2026 election. We are a nonprofit, but we are inclined to fight for democracy. And so from the half hour on, we're going to deal with Ray Lutz and the multiple issues that it will take to protect the 2026 election. And then in the second hour, we're going to go a full hour, as we often do, on the issues of nuclear power and cheap energy, going 100% green. And we're going to focus on the Diablo Canyon reactors in particular because it's got a dog going there. In
Sorry.
particular because we have a gubernatorial race in California. We're going to get a new governor, and that governor will hopefully do better than Gavin Newsom did on dealing with the perils and extreme costs of the Diablo Canyon reactor and nuclear power in general. We've been having earthquakes here in California, and every time I read of another earthquake, I'm petrified as I am downwind from those two reactors. So we've got a very full boat here. This is our last gathering of the year. We will reconvene on January 5th, but this is the 151st. No, is it 150 or 250? I never can remember the head count here.
250, Harvey.
250. I wrote down 150. It's 251. We've been going since April of 2020. We started off primarily to preserve and protect the 2020 election, and we did. And now here we are, almost 6 years later, and we're looking at the 26 election. That will be our our dual goal in the coming year is to protect the 26 election and shut the nuclear power industry so we can convert 100% to renewable energy. We're starting with 40 people. And it's my horribly sad task to commemorate the passing of the great Rob Reiner in Hollywood. He was stabbed to death along with his wife. The suspect and his son. It couldn't be more sad or devastating or terrifying. I always wanted to meet Rob Reiner. He made such wonderful movies and seemed like a really great guy. And Donald Trump has welcomed his death. There's nothing more I can say. Donald Trump has welcomed his death. I will say that he's talking about Trump derangement syndrome. The real reason for Trump derangement syndrome is that Trump is deranged. And that's the bottom line here. Paul Newman, you emailed that your sister, Lorraine, was a close friend of Rob Reiner's. Maybe you met him. Do you want to say a word about Rob Reiner, Paul Newman? If you're with us and you want to unmute, please do. And if you can slip in a word, but we'll start with Mimi German and your poem from our poet laureate, and then we will go into Waldport, Oregon for the first half hour.
Oh, there I am. Good.
Oh, Paul, yes. Do you want to say a word about?
Yeah, I know I was able to meet Rob Reiner. He was doing with Stephanie Miller and oh, what's his name? The guy who talks about God a lot, who's a comic.
Don Novello.
No, not him.
John Fuselage.
Yeah, Fugelsang, John Fugelsang.
Fugelsang.
And actually, I was with Will Ryan and Nancy Naparco, and Lorraine was on the show. And anyway, so we were all together, and Rob was there and everything, and he was super nice. And it was kind of cool to meet him. You know, I used to watch All in the Family. I think it was All in the Family, right?
Yeah, it was on the family, yes.
Right. And as a kid, when I was a lot younger. And he was a big time activist. I think he had some sort of organ foundation that was responsible for preventing, I think it was some environmental thing going on, or some, I don't remember. I remember seeing somebody talk about it, but I don't quite remember.
Well,
But
he was, he was someone that we really were going to go to help us get California 100% green.
right.
I mean, I was on my list.
And he
So,
was able, his foundation was able to stop something that had to do with damaging the environment. He was able to do it with his foundation, which I thought was a great achievement.
right. Well, he was clearly incredibly talented. I loved his father, Carl Reiner. I followed him greatly. Carl Reiner, his father, made one of the great comic albums of all time with Mel Brooks, The 2,000-Year-Old Man. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. But Carl and Rob were just two incredibly important people. And to have the President of the United States welcome his death is just over the
Yeah,
top.
it's crazy. I mean, it just amazes me that, this is the norm for a lot of people to think like this. It's just really messed up, man.
Yeah. Well, Paul, it's always great to have you with us.
Thank
And you're
you.
going to want to be in the second hour, especially when we talk about Diablo Canyon. John Steiner has raised a hand, friend of the show, of the GREEP Zoom. John, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Harvey, thank you. And thank you, Paul. I just want to say, and I don't have a word to replace it with, that it feels like it's time to stop calling him the President of the United States.
Yes.
And maybe we can come up with something that's appropriate, but not,
How about Satan? How about Great Satan?
well, something that might re that the majority of Americans can relate to.
I had a friend whose nephew called him the resident, D-I-N-K,
Oh, okay. Well,
the resident.
it's horrible. I don't know, John, if you ever met Rob Reiner. I never did, but I always assumed that at some point I would meet Rob Reiner, and
Well,
that
I think he was one of those who were one of us without his knowing we were together, if you know what I mean.
yeah. But in my playbook, he was going to be instrumental in in helping to shut Diablo Canyon. I mean, that was a clear priority, but that's not why we mourn him. Someone questioned, Mel Brooks is in fact still alive. He's 100 years old, and I'm sure is in deep, deep mourning now. He and Carl Reiner, Rob's father, were very, very close. And okay, well, Heidi, did you want to say something very quickly? And we're going to move on, please, Heidi. Heidi Verthaller, let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I used to call uh the orange one the illegitimate oligarch number 45. And I
Okay.
also feel that Rob Reiner needs to have like huge accolades for all the stuff that he did because he was just such a good man and he did
Right.
so many excellent things for the environment. So
He was a
he
mensch.
was
He
a
was a
real
tremendous,
hero.
you're right, Heidi, he was a real hero. And okay, we move on, as we must. Mimi German, you're going to give us a poem and then take us to Waldport for the first half hour. And we're going to talk about saving the election and then saving the planet. Go ahead. We have 50
Uh,
people, 55 people with us. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I chose a poem that I wrote during COVID that's in this book of mine, Where Grass is Bend. And Trump was the president at that time. And I've been working with folks who are who are part of Mayor Heidi's team. And it is really chaotic. And with Rob Reiner's death, what happened in Australia, and Brown, and on and on and on. I chose this poem today. It's very short. It is called In This State. In this state, which state is the state of emergency? And with that, I want to welcome Mayor Heidi.
Mayor of Waldport, Oregon, which we've been following in its struggle for democracy. And Mayor and Mimi has been your great advocate. It's great to have you with us.
I would also like to welcome AMY Anderson, my new sister in radical moves to keep Mayor Heidi in her position as mayor. She is part of Indivisible Waldport. And I'd also like to bring into this Tony. Can we add Tony to this? Tony is the chief petitioner for the recall of the 6 city councilors in Waldport.
So let me give a quick thumbnail.
I'm gonna do that for you.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, Mayor Heidi.
And by the way, I just want to announce, I know I don't want to get confusing. I will be 80 on New Year's Eve, and in honor of that, I've changed my nickname. My nickname since for 50 years has been Sluggo, but I can no longer claim to be a ball player. So I have changed my name to Sonny, and I hope it sticks, and you can all call me Sonny. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
Okay, Sonny. So, for many people who come to GREEP and have been following the doings in Waldport, Mayor Heidi was duly elected in the small ocean town of Waldport. And 3 months after her election, she was arrested by the sheriff's department by orders of the city manager and the backing of the city council. A judge ruled all of that unconstitutional and sat Heidi back in her chair as mayor. In the process, Heidi's law team brought a lawsuit against the city of Waldport, and I'm going to scoot ahead. After all of that happened, our friend Tony, can we put Tony up on the screen?
We'll try. Go ahead.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Tony's got to turn his video on. Tony,
Oh,
you
okay.
wanna do that.
We're on the radio also, so.
Oh, okay, cool. So Tony and a group of people decided that they were going to, being fed up with the lack of accountability in Waldport. Hey, Tony, with the lack of accountability in Waldport, to recall all 6 city councilors. So he went through this process. This is one of the things we'll get into today in this half hour. And the city manager, a man called Dan Cutter, is like a mini Trump, and all parts mini, just like Trump. And he has now, I'm sure, we don't know this factually, but regardless, there is now an effort to recall Mayor Heidi. And that brings us up to date with what we are working on, both the recall for the 6 city councilors, the new recall for against the mayor, and the work that Amy is doing as well to prevent this from going down.
Okay.
Whoever wants to start.
This is a fight for democracy at the most basic level. It's one of the reasons we carry on with this, and we hope everybody's tuned in. It's like a mini drama showing in the max picture of the attack on democracy. Mayor Heidi was duly elected. They didn't like her. They had her arrested, for God's sakes, and she got back by court order, thank God, and now thank the Constitution, and now she has initiated a recall of the 6 MAGA council members.
Well, Sluggo,
They are fighting back. They are fighting back.
Sluggo, this is really important. Mayor Heidi is not initiating this. This is a grassroots initiated recall effort. Heidi is the mayor. So let's be very, very careful, because we do know that some of these people watch our GREEP Zooms and then they use it to trash talk Heidi. So let's try to not cause her more trouble than she's causing on her own.
You're 100% right in that. We have Amy and Tony with us, and we have 15 more minutes to deal with this. So everybody, this is a drama is soon to be made, soon to be a major motion picture, which I'm sure Rob Reiner would have been glad to direct. But go ahead, please.
Well,
Um,
I just oh,
yeah, go ahead, Heidi.
well, I just wanted to say that so the community, as you all can imagine, has been as torn as the nation, and it's been just really a lot of ugliness back and forth. And we're a really tiny community, so it's really impactful. And what happened last week was we heard that ICE was moving in. We were told that one of our old hotels on the coast, ICE was trying to buy. And the city manager was saying it was just rumor and really downplaying it. And thanks for Indivisible and Amy and a lot of their efforts. They had over 700 emails sent to City Hall, and 200 people showed up saying, "We do not want ICE. We do not want ICE housed here, and we don't want to detain people here, and we don't want this." And that countered my council. My council had to work with me, and they made a resolution with me, and we passed that last Wednesday. But what happened was the backlash of that was they filed to recall me on Friday. And so they were trying to take credit for saying no to ICE and have me removed for saying no to ICE. And I think that that is something a lot of the politicians are going to be facing right now nationwide, is we're feeling pressure from both sides, and there is no middle. There's no middle for anyone here. So I just want to thank Amy and Tony for being here, and let them speak a little bit about their efforts of what they've done to uphold democracy in our little tiny town that's really changing things for our state and nation.
Really great to have you on the vanguard of this, and it's certainly analogous to what's going on nationwide. Tony and Amy, do you want to jump in as well?
Go ahead, Tony.
Maybe you guys can talk about the recall that you did, Tony.
Need to know about the recall. Amy and I right now are working on an injunction to get the previous recall authorized. We were disqualified for lacking initials, even though we weren't told to put them on there, on optional information. We are moving forward with starting a new recall. I mean, we're not going to just cover one base or the other. Unfortunately, some of it's a little slow. I mean, I have to do government forms, and I've got half of them done. Their sites are down. It's kind of interesting, but not really. But Amy's helped a great deal, and Indivisible's helped a great deal with getting things moved on in Waldport. I wish we could get Indivisible on board for the recall, but we'll see. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, but sadly, with the small town politics in Waldport, our Indivisible group has people on both sides of the recall Heidi side of things, and it's a long and sordid tale, but basically we have some people who kind of gave her a bad name at her previous job, and then the current city manager took a little kernel from that and then spun it into a big story that Heidi is a
Whatever.
person who creates hostile work environments. It's all, think malignant narcissist and gaslighting, and you would have the guy that is doing all of these things to Heidi. Where Indivisible comes in, we did a lot of work on when we found out that the city was basically going to blow off the rumors about ICE being cited in Waldport. We had different information. We are paying very close attention to what's going on, and we had what we considered credible information that there in fact was a contract in the works between the hotel and DHS. So we activated our networks. We activated the Coastal Network and COIN, which is the network that covers the whole state. And we did a call to action. We asked people, hey, if you can show up and speak, show up and speak. And if you cannot, please send a email public comment to the city and let them know that under no circumstances are you going to visit Waldport if they allow ICE in our community. And that's where we generated the 700 emails. And I counted 130. There's, estimates between 120 and 200 people showing up, but it's never happened in Waldport. This is a record-breaking crowd. And so I just want to say I'm really proud of our network. I'm proud of what Indivisible has done. And we took the city from saying, oh, nothing to see here, to, oh, we have a resolution that we're going to fight this in every legal way that we can.
Wow.
And not only that, but before those emails came in, Dan Cutter's the city manager. He was saying that the city should remain neutral on ICE coming in, and then completely flipped, found out Heidi was bringing a resolution to bring to the city council. And he told her, I have one, which was like a grade F compared to what Heidi's was. And they introduced that, and he wants to take the credit for this. So this is a guy who was like basically pro-ICE coming in, then received these emails and said, oh, F, and had to change course because of what Amy's network did. So I'm bringing that up.
Can you put the wording of your anti-ICE resolution in the chat so that because this is going to be a national template here. We have
yours, Mayor Heidi, not Dan Cutter's.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because obviously people are resisting ICE. There's a great new phrase that came up when we were talking before the convening here called freeze ICE, which I think is pretty cool. Maybe we should start printing up T-shirts. But if we can put your good resolution in the chat, it'll go around and it'll help other communities. Yeah.
Yeah, I will see if I can do that right now. It's very long.
Oh, okay.
And I have to say I can't take full credit for it.
Don't.
There are other authors as well.
Drag and drop files into the chat can be done.
Well, I'm gonna just see what you get, guys. There you go.
Okay, so there will be then Tony and Amy. Where do you stand now on your recall petition on the 6 MAGA members of the council?
So that was they canceled it, the recall, on a technicality. We were told by the county clerk, that we could fill in information on the petitions for the signers. As long as they sign their name, we could write the addresses for them. And then the city found a little law saying that if you write anything, I think it was specifically for disabled people, that they had to initial it. And so they used that to disqualify our petitions. So we're going in two directions. We're going to start a brand new recall, and we are also filing an emergency injunction to have the judge decide whether what we did was okay or not. And hopefully, I mean, in the best case scenario, the judge will say, yeah, you can use these petitions, let the recall proceed. And if that doesn't happen, we are preparing to launch another recall effort.
Okay, excellent. Mike Hurst, thank you, Mike, for correcting me on the origin of the recall petition. And go ahead, please.
Of course, Sonny, happy to do it. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. One is that this is a situation where a bunch of activists kept their ears to the ground, heard that ICE was sniffing around their locality. They mobilized and they stopped it by working together. So a huge shout out to that. Another thing is that we've heard, there are people on both sides of one issue, and then but you don't have to agree on everything to work together on something. And if we're going to succeed in stopping the fascists, whether it's in Waldport, Oregon, or Washington, D.C., or anywhere in between, we've got to learn to put our differences aside, work together, and keep our eyes on the prize. So thank you so much, Waldport, for coming together. I know the job isn't done yet, but I know you will get the job done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Excellent.
Amy, I would like to ask if there are any asks from you for listeners of this, whether it's on the radio or right now, to bring support to the recall that is in progress now against Mayor Heidi or the other recall. If there's anything that you need from people, whether it's phone calls, this is a great place to put that out because people on this Zoom call.
Yeah. Are you thinking in, like, for example, phone banking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of my thoughts were that we could get a phone bank going, both to support Heidi and to say, hey, we need to get rid of the good old boy network by recalling these counselors, and so that we could get transparency back in our government. So we could use help with that. You know, any donations that we get, we're going to use towards advertising in the community. We have found that most people, even though to us this is a huge thing, we all eat, sleep, and breathe this recall stuff, but when we go out and we petition, we find that the average homeowner in Waldport, the average voter, doesn't even have a clue what's happening. So the more that we can get, you know, postcards out and telephone banking and whatnot to let people know what's going on, that would be really helpful.
All right, very good. A classic grassroots campaign. Amy, if you'll put your contacts in the chat, that would be great. Also, there's a newspaper there, the Lincoln Chronicle. Would somebody put their website in there for letters to the editor? That would be great too. We got 61 people with us. Mickey Leader, go ahead. Someone says, by the way, it's 6 degrees in Maine. And they've said burr, it's freezing. But Heidi spelled burr, B-U-R-R, which is also the name of Aaron Burr, who was a real jerk. So I get that it sort of fits. Aaron Burr is the guy who killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. So he's not my favorite guy. Mickey Leader, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
I wanted to respond to the first thing I heard, where you're looking for a new name and you don't want to call him the president.
Oh, can we not talk about that just yet, Mickey?
Uh-huh.
Can we finish this?
Oh,
That would be great.
Just 2 minutes left. I know Tony needs to say something. So Tony.
You know
Mickey,
what?
we'll come back to you.
One of the counselors came out and talked about Heidi's dark agenda. Heidi campaigned on transparency in government and being open and honest. And for the last year, we've heard that we can't get a city audit. I contacted the auditors. The auditor said they're happy to make a presentation anytime, explain their progress and what they're finding. And I've already notified the council members, every single one of them, that I'm going to put it on social media, that they can have them available by the next meeting. It would be nice if we could get pressure on them so that they can't back off, because this has been their normal method. It just deflects, delay until everybody forgets about it.
And one thing I want to throw into the hopper here, I know it's deep in the background, but I'm hoping personally when Mayor Heidi and a new council come in, that Waldport will go 100% renewable, and that you can spread solar panels and maybe even a big windmill offshore to make Waldport the first town on the west coast of the United States to be completely free of fossil and nuclear fuels.
Right, we got to keep Mayor Heidi as Mayor Heidi for a long time to make that happen.
Right, and then you can call yourself Sunny too. So we'll be good. And by the way, just for clarification, it is Sunny. I don't want to be confused with Sonny Corleone next time I'm driving through a toll booth, but that's a deep one.
So Amy, I think Amy and I spoke about if folks are going to write a letter to the editor, and we really should get the newspaper email in the chat at some point. If folks are going to write to the editor, he is super MAGA, and the letters should say something to the effect of, we want Mayor Heidi to remain Mayor Heidi, and we want the city of Waldport to complete its audits.
There you go. Well, as Robin Williams once said, the great comic, he was doing a parody of a televangelist. He said, the word audit does not appear in the Bible, but at this point, maybe it should. So there we go. All right. Hey, listen, it's great to have you. We'll have you back on January 5th when we resume. Everybody, take this seriously. Waldport is our poster child for democracy, and when Mayor Heidi gets back in with a decent city council, it will also be the first 100% green town on the Pacific Coast. Thank you all. Thank you, Mimi, for that. We really appreciate it. And we got 61 people with us. It is a fantastic tribute to grassroots democracy, what you're doing in Waldport, and it would make a great Rob Reiner movie, no doubt about it. So thank you. All right, we're going to move on now. We're going to talk about national elections, national democracy, and then second hour more on renewable energy. Mickey Leader, you had a new name for the guy in the White House. What's left of the White House, Mickey?
Well, it's actually his immigrant grandfather's real name, Drumpf,
Oh yeah,
from Germany. And I thought, you know, if anybody complained about you calling him Drumpf, well, that's his name, his immigrant grandfather's last name. And, you know, just rub in that he's an immigrant just like everybody else, you know, except for the indigenous people here. But also because it's a very, it's an ugly name. And if you want to not be accused of making up something or using something derogatory, just use his family name.
Well, his grandfather, as you point out, his grandfather was an immigrant. His mother was an immigrant.
Right.
Two of his three wives have been immigrants. And the MAGA movement has never been real fans of the indigenous, for God's sakes. If you don't like the indigenous and you don't like immigrants, who's left? Anyway, there we go. Heidi, thank you for that. Much appreciated. And Mickey, thank you for that. I appreciate your Drumpf contribution. It's actually quite credible. Okay, we're going to move on now for the second half hour into what gave us our birth in 2020, which is the question of protecting elections. Ray Lutz was with us then, and he's with us again. Seems to me that protecting elections has at least three basic components. Number one, and we've talked about this with Greg Palast quite often, protecting the turnout. Protecting voter registration, who can vote and can they get a ballot and can they get to the polls? Secondly, how are the votes counted? Are they on paper? Do we have these horrible DREs? What's the corruption been with voting machines? Worse now than ever, given the situation with who owns Dominion, et cetera. And then finally, and maybe there's more, maybe I'm missing a point, how do we audit? How do we confirm the veracity of the voter turnout and the vote count? So Ray Lutz has been with this issue a long, long time. And if anybody has another PowerPoint or piece of this puzzle to contribute, please do. We're going to go for a half hour. And this is one of our major action points for the 2026, obviously, as it was in 2020, when I believe we succeeded actually in protecting that election to a certain extent. Ray Lutz, do you want to comment on the three-part analysis here?
Yeah, I think the voter suppression concept that Greg Palast works on mostly, that's really important. However, they show that the suppression I think the suppression is that part of it, suppression, is direct suppression, is really important. The other scams like the voter ID scam, whether or not you have that, whether or not you have 1-day elections or vote by mail or not, a lot of things that are on the list of wish lists of right wingers don't make that much of a needle to move. But I'll tell you what really moves it is this one of the most important things is this gerrymandering thing going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
That is, like, more than anything else, that can have, as we see, it could have a huge impact, so much that it may change the whole landscape. And I want to bring up one thing I've been noticing in various districts around. What I've been noticing is that when you look at the Republican turnout versus, like, the partisanality of the precinct, so that's what we do a lot. We put that along the x-axis, and so that the really, red ones are on the right and the blue ones are on the left. And when you plot the turnout of Republicans, it is just right along a line. They have really hard turnout. The Democratic blue turnout tends to be much more dispersed or drooping, if you will, and that we're not getting good turnout. Now, that could be due to suppression techniques. It could be due to just pulling the ballots out and discarding them. There's many ways it could look like the Democrats are not showing up to vote. It could also be that they're just not a good enough ground game. I know this group has worked on a lot to get out the vote efforts, and there's nothing there's no shortage of what can be improved there. The ground game and getting people to come out and vote, trying to appeal to those nonpartisan voters that are kind of in the middle and are not affiliated with one party or the other. I mean, basically, what we find is that if people are affiliated with a party, they're going to basically vote for that party on a big presidential election or congressional election. If they're not affiliated, now they could swing either way. Now, there's some at the edges, of course, that are affiliated but would possibly vote the other way or not vote. And this time around, we were discussing this morning, like, what would happen to these voters? Like in Tennessee, you had the Democratic candidate Bain. She did quite well with a 9-point loss versus what would have been a 22-point loss. That was not audited at all. No auditing, no looking at the paper. A lot of people pushing for, let's make sure we get paper, and I endorse that, but you got to look at it. If you're going to have it for audits, you have to at least look at one and see if it's okay. It would only take around 400 randomly sampled ballots to confirm that election that basically Van what's his name? Van
Okay, well,
Jones, Van Jones.
oh, Van Jones.
No,
Van. Okay. Well, so the question then is
in Tennessee, the 7th district. I can't think of his name, but
well,
anyway,
in Tennessee, I've seen
Van Epps.
Van Epps, yeah,
Van Epps. Okay, the bad guy. So the question in that Tennessee vote, I've seen, and I'm sure other people have seen, articles questioning whether she actually legitimately won.
Oh yeah, I mean, or that he actually legitimately won. You could do it either way. So the Republicans are going to say, she shouldn't have won by that much, and he should have won by more, right? Or she shouldn't have lost by only 9. She should have lost by 20. And so you can appeal to their desire to maybe audit it, to say, look, we want to actually go in there with a fine-tooth comb, not just an audit that will determine whether or not Van Epps actually won at all. And if it was flipped, that takes a lot to flip 9 points. You don't have to sample very many because the number that would have to change would be very large. But what if Van Epps should have won by more? Those kind of audits don't determine that at all. They don't determine if the winner actually should have won by more than what is shown. They just say Yeah, the winner won by at least 9.
Well,
And
how was this ballot in Tennessee conducted? Was this done on paper? Were these paper ballots?
a lot of them were, okay, but a lot of them were old push button machines.
Oh
Push
my God.
button.
So for those of you, direct DRE, when you hear DRE, it means direct recorded entry. And
Yeah.
that is done on a computer with zero accountability. And
Right.
the easiest way to steal an election
Yeah,
is
so
to
these had that
have,
kind of
go
they
ahead.
had that kind of DRE, except they were upgraded a little bit with what they call a VVPAT, which is voter verifiable paper audit trail. So in theory, the voter, when they push button in their selections, which was only 2, right? There's only these 2 parties, or maybe there were some other candidates, but one contest was on the ballot. And so they yeah, if you look at some of those counties, we got to go go to that. I can't show you, but the one that sticks up right there, the one yeah, try that one. So that one
Okay, remember you're on the radio. So
yeah. So
we're
anyway,
looking at a map here of voting in Tennessee.
That's express vote. Now those turn out the ES&S express vote, which is used by I think 5 of the counties. They do produce a piece of paper that comes out. The person can then read it, and then it gets scanned by another device. So that's a what they call a ballot marking device. It does have barcodes on it though, which is what the vote is actually encoded in. So if you're a user, a voter, and you look at it, you see a name like Van Epps, and you see a barcode there, but you don't know if the barcode specifies Van Epps or Afton
Right.
Bay.
So these are machines that we have ferociously opposed. And let me just say, this question, this movement dates back to Florida 2000 and Ohio 2004. And in Ohio 2004, there was a fierce battle over these electronic voting machines. And we campaigned for 20 years, continuing to go to 100% hand-counted paper ballots. But what Ray is pointing out is that if you don't audit the outcome, if you never go in and physically count the hand cast paper ballots, then what's the point? Is that right, Ray?
Yeah, even if you get paper, which is what these are now, if you go and hit on one of those that is the reddish
Okay,
county on the map,
yeah.
then you will get the okay, well, you've already gone to it. I'm sorry, I wasn't watching. Yeah,
Yeah, but go ahead. Remember, again, we're on radio.
Yeah, so in this area, there's 14 counties, and 5 of them use this really old push button type of machine that has the VVPAT at it. Now, the VVPAT is basically like a receipt of a excuse me, of a cash register, and it goes behind a window. And as you vote, you press your button, and then you can read it on this receipt. And then in theory, they can check that later to make sure the vote came out that way. And when you pull that computer media out of that device and move it over to the central tabulator, that's what actually has the votes. And what they say is, oh, well, we have that VVPAT now, and that means that we can go and check to make sure that computer media actually has the right votes on it. The problem is no one looks at it. So even though they have this paper tape that the voter has looked at and verifies that's how I voted, it could put it in the other way on this media. And since no one looks at the paper tape, you would never know.
Right.
So,
And the paper tape is really fragile. And it's like, as Ray said, it's like a receipt you get at a 7-Eleven. And so we want and have been successful. As far as I'm concerned, the 2020 election would not have gone to Joe Biden had there not been hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots. Now, a lot of that came because of vote by mail during the COVID. But it was a successful campaign over 20 years since Florida 2000 to convert our of elections to mostly hand-marked, and that's important because there are computer marking devices which are completely extraneous and also corruptible. So we want
Right.
hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots, but John Brakey has advocated those paper ballots be digitally scanned, which is a great backup if you have the ability to verify that the digital scanning is accurate. And that's another challenge.
Okay.
But
Well, let
hand
me just
marked, hand counted, digitally scanned, verifiable paper is the way that we want 2026 to be dealt with. Is that fair, Ray?
let me just refine what you said a little bit. The paper tape behind that VV-Pat is not like the receipt that you get, because you don't get a
You don't
receipt
get
from
it.
that, but it's hundreds of feet long. So you get this paper tape. If you take it out, it's going to unravel, and then complete mess.
Worthless.
So like finding like making sure that the ballots are right, then you would have to go through and count or sample those. Now I think to be fair, we should probably approach this incrementally. That is, hand marked paper ballots is number one. Okay, that means getting rid of the barcodes, which is already, guess what? Trump is actually behind this. So that means a lot of these red leaning districts are going to want to do it. And that's to our benefit to actually go with that and go with hand marked paper ballots as much as possible. Right now, Georgia, and you're right, Georgia used to have the worst of the worst machines, no paper trail whatsoever. And in 2020, they finally got machines with a paper trail, although they were electronic front end. Now they've actually, by law, are now having to replace those by July. And they have to replace them all and go to hand marked paper ballots, which would be a huge win.
Okay.
But getting into hand counted is another thing that may be more difficult than the compromise position, which is getting all of the ballots scanned and those scanned images made public so we can verify the vote. The
But
problem
with the
is that
digital scanning, you still have the paper ballots and they are approachable and can be counted.
that's right. But here's the thing is I don't trust hand counting people either. So if you say we're just going to have hand counting and not, I don't mind if they try to hand count, but they're basically going to resist that. They're going to want to do machine counting and a hand count check on that. And if they want to do hand counting, that's fine with me. But my goal is to get those images available and publicly available so that we can count them ourselves. And
Wonderful.
that way,
Okay.
yeah, that way that
Excellent.
we can verify it as a third party. Because the trouble is the ballots, the actual paper ballots are, they're precious, and so they don't want to have anyone go in there and touch them. And so you can't, as a third party, verify anything. And guess what? They say, yeah, we have the paper ballots. They're all on pallets and they're shrink wrapped. They're in the other warehouse,
Right.
and they're going to be there for 22 months by law. We've got them, and
Okay.
no one can look at them. So what good is it?
Well, you got to be able to look at it. Absolutely. That's the point
Yeah.
we have to raise. Mimi, go ahead, and then
Okay,
Ruth.
Ray, I have three questions for you. One is
Okay.
when the elections are close, like the election that you were just speaking about a few minutes ago, well, what state was that in? Where
Tennessee.
our person, yeah.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
And like so many elections over the years, all the way back to Gore, if they're close, shouldn't we not just give in? Should the person who is running for that seat say, whoa, I am not conceding until we have a public count or some type of count that can, verify what has happened? The other question.
Wait. Let's start that for a minute. Maybe let's raise four names here: Al Gore, John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, and Kamala Harris. Not one of them stood for a hand count in the ballot, and all of them disappeared. I mean, well, not Gore so much, but his sins were worse because he prevented a challenge to the Florida delegation. But nonetheless, those four disappeared and did not.
So aside from the fact that Ray, shouldn't it be a policy of ours whichever side wants to call on it, to say, I'm not conceding until we count.
It matters not if the person says they're conceding or not. That all comes down to what is the actual count. If the person says I concede, but it comes out so that they're a winner, you think they're going to take it? So that conceding is just, it's like, oh, what do you have? Sour grapes? You're not going to. And the Democratic Party contestants fear any kind of like saying, well, I don't quite trust the vote, because they don't want to add fuel to the fire of what Trump was doing with Stop the Steal. So that's why they're not doing it. But I agree, they should not concede until after the certification occurs. They can do it if they want, like if it's obviously they think that they don't want the seat. But I think the Democrats should start looking at it more carefully.
Both parties have to do it.
And well, the Republicans already are doing that. So the Democrats have a fear of doing it, and they need to start doing it more.
Right. Ridiculous.
And so then they'll be more even. But absolutely, I agree with that.
And they attack us. The Democrats always attack the people who challenge the outcome.
They do.
I will point out, by the way, briefly, that Al Gore in 2000 conceded, and then he called Bush and said, "Well, wait, I unconcede." But then he didn't pursue it. He didn't do what was needed to be done.
And what's ridiculous is I went up in Michigan and Detroit, and I sat there at the tables during the Jill Stein recount in 2016, and the Trump attorneys were there. They would challenge everything, and the count wasn't quite right. They'd say, stop counting. The Clinton attorneys would say nothing, and they would just sit there, mum, and do nothing, because they didn't want, it was like told, yeah, be there, but don't do anything. What is the reason? So I am just, I'm totally inflamed about this issue. Absolutely. I agree with you, Mimi. It's got to
and the Democrats always attack us. It's outrageous. The Republicans don't seem to care.
They attack each other so much, it's ridiculous. So,
yeah, Mimi, go ahead. Mimi had another one.
You answered my second question, which what is the best way to do voting? But you've touched on that for sure. The third question is.
Let me just hit that one more time.
Go ahead.
My opinion, best way to do voting is hand-marked paper ballots, which are then scanned by machines that create images. My preference is machines that know nothing about the ballot, what's on it, and just create images without knowing how to process them. Just create the images, and then you can use the other machines if you want for either counting or hand counting, however you want to count it. But I want those images preserved and made public. That's my preference.
Okay. The third question is, if the Dems can take over the majority again, if that happens, do states have can it be a federal thing that this is how voting is going to be, or states do get, I just didn't know. I figured that states get to choose their way of voting.
They have the Election Assistance Commission, which is independent, and it's a commission that makes voluntary guidelines. So, they call it the the Voluntary Voter Systems Guidelines, VVSG, are the guidelines for how these voting systems will be designed. And now, of course, they have a weird mindset, which is hand-marked paper ballots are not even something they want to discuss, because that's not an electronic voting system. And I say, well, that's what we want, is we want hand-marked paper ballots. So let's talk about the format, the pens, all that stuff, make recommendations so people can go down that trail. Instead, they've got this mindset, they can't get out of it. Electronic voting system, it has to be electronic with a touch screen or something. And so that's now finally, actually, thank you, Trump, for doing this, because now it's moving in that direction away from barcodes.
But Trump has been fighting against vote by mail, which really makes no sense. We got 6 more minutes on this. We obviously are going to take this up in the new year.
It's a con job there on their side, because they know that it wouldn't happen. They're trying to change the standards, which would take years to put into place. Then they can say the Democrats aren't doing anything. They're blocking this. And because we didn't put this through, but people can change but it's true. And it's important, though, to make this point. The machines and how it's counted, whether you count by hand or not, is all based on a state and county level. And that's important, because if you put this in the hands of the federal government, then it could be completely captured by whoever's in power at the time. So it's great to have it be at this county level, but it makes a drawback in that it's a little bit harder to control.
Right. The state versus federal thing is 200 years old. That's a major confrontation. So we still have 56 people. We're at 2:55 California time. I got 5 more minutes on this. If anybody wants to pipe in, we had a hand from Ruth. I don't know where Ruth went to.
I'm right here.
Oh, Ruth, go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Ray, so I know you're in San Diego. I don't know whether you know about Los Angeles. You certainly know about it from previous times. We have this horrific registrar, Dean Logan, crooked as the day is long, spent
Absolutely.
$300 million on machines the last go around, and who knows what kind of tickets he got for whatever, Major League Baseball or whatever. But anyway, those machines, I got a hold of the technical analysis from a company, Freeman and whatever, 43 failures, 7 critical failures, things like you could open the back of the a box and just take out a wad of ballots. There was no trail for who opened and when the ballot devices were opened, whatever. My bottom line is, I was out to dinner with some people the other night who said that paper ballots in Los Angeles are not going to be available at the for this year's election. Do you know, or does anybody on this call know anything about that? Thank you.
Well, a couple of years ago, I went with Mimi Kennedy to a polling station, and we've been fighting for this tooth and nail. So what we're going to do is we'll reconvene January 5th. We're going to give this a full hour, and because that is the agenda for 2026. Part of the two-part agenda. We need to guarantee that 26 will be dealt with properly. And gerrymandering is another, obviously, issue. Gerrymandering is a two-edged sword. And the Republicans in Indiana who rejected Trump's gerrymandering scheme were concerned that if they over gerrymandered, they'd wind up losing seats. And, we've been dealing with gerrymandering for a long, long time as well. For those of you who are interested, the word gerrymandering comes from Elbridge Gerry. He was the governor of Massachusetts in 1812, and he gerrymandered the states for the feds. And what the word came because the pundits said that the districts that he drew, there is a beautiful cartoon of it, which we can put up in next year. They looked like salamanders. And so they called the district redistricting Gerry after Elbridge Gerry, who became vice president, by the way, and salamanders. That's the root of the word. So we will deal with that too. Ray, it's always great to have you with us. Do you want to, Ruth, is that what? Well, we'll have to answer your question, Ruth.
Well, let me try to just say.
We need to look in LA really closely. Go ahead.
We have a couple things about LA, because I've gone up there and watched their audits and everything. I think they are able to thwart the audits completely and do as much changes as necessary to get in whoever they want. Now, realize LA is a democratically controlled region, and it's got a lot of control by the utilities. And so the Democratic Party puts in who they want, and not some upstart. So it is a problem. Dean Logan, I agree, is a dirty player. The audits are dirty because they rescan the ballots if there's any issue and then compare with the new report. And I can describe that later. It's kind of hard to get a handle on it at first, but it basically means you can change it to whatever you want. Those are machines with barcodes.
Ray, if you're not back in Hawaii, oh, there you go. There it is. That's the original cartoon. That's the original gerrymandering of Massachusetts. And the governor was Elbridge Gerry. He drew these ridiculous districts, and they said they looked like salamanders, and that's where the word gerrymandering came from. So there you go. All right, listen, this has been a great step forward. We're going to retake this January 5th. We're going to get into gerrymandering, voter ID. Greg Palast, great movie, which I know Ruth has seen, Vigilante Inc. Talks about the voter turnout and the suppression there. But listen, forewarned is forearmed. We were not ready in Ohio 2004 or Florida 2000, but we are ready now. And there's no excuse for this. And the Democrats, I will never forgive the Democrats in 2016 for refusing, as Ray mentioned, to do what needed to be done in Michigan. This is the issue of our time. So in number 252 on January 5th, we will have a full hour to set the table for 2026.
And Sluggo, my point is right directed at that.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Our elections do not belong to the candidates. Our elections belong to the electorate. And it shouldn't be incumbent on Hillary Clinton or Al Gore or anybody else to stand up for our elections. That should be hardwired into the system. We should have automatic audits if it's close. We should have automatic audits to make sure that it's on the up and up.
Absolutely.
And we shouldn't have to rely on some mainstream candidate to stick up for our voting rights. Those votes belong to us. That election belongs to us. So the judge, I think, was guilty of misconduct when he was asking for somebody else with standing and saying that Jill Stein didn't have standing. Of course she does. She's a voter. All voters should have standing. So I think that it was a miscarriage of justice to even rely on Hillary Clinton or Al Gore or Kamala Harris or John Kerry. These elections belong to the United States of America. They don't belong to any particular candidate. And we have to get away from this thinking that the Democrats or any particular politician is going to save us. We have to do it ourselves.
That's true, 100%. But 98%. We got to remember also, though, that many of the states have limits, a percentage margin where you automatically trip a recount. And in 2024, the 7 swing states all had margins for Trump just outside the percentage that would have required a recount. It was very fishy. And when you've got an Elon Musk pouring in allegedly 300 million, but probably more like 3 billion to make sure that the election went a certain way, something needed to be said by the losing candidate, allegedly losing candidate, that this looks awful fishy.
And that's why we need to have automatic audits, irrespective of whether anybody calls for it.
But Mike, you got to remember, and we'll move on. But Mike, I totally respect your view here, but you got to remember that the states do have percentage margins, where below which an audit is automatically tripped.
But I'm talking about something else. I'm not talking about a recount. I'm talking about automatic audits for accuracy's sake.
Clinton should have been challenging that, not relying upon Jill Stein. She should have been, and her attorneys would just sit there quiet, even though they were there. The reason that they were having trouble in all of Michigan is if the little chicken scratch sheet that says how many ballots are in the box didn't happen to match the box, they wouldn't do the audit of the box. And they would say that's unauditable. I mean, that's how stupid that is. That's the ones that you should audit more, the ones that don't.
That's right, Ray. That's why it should be automatic. It shouldn't rely on any candidate. It shouldn't rely on any percentage. It just happened.
All elections should be audited.
That's
agree.
Right.
And in Michigan, they were just, what was happening there, I'll tell you the inside track is it was becoming such a horrible mess because they had so many, and I think it was 60,000 ballots in just Detroit alone in these uncountable batches that they had to do something. And so that's when they said, okay, well, let's make up something. Let's say that Jill Stein shouldn't be doing this.
Okay, well, we're going to take this up in 26 on January 5th. We're going to do a full hour, and we're going to spend the entire year in 26 dealing with this at its depth. Thank you again, Ray. Thank you, Mike.
And Sonny, we have Lynn Feinerman with her hand up.
Okay, Lynn, and then we're going to move into Diablo Canyon. We've been joined by some great activists. We have 64 people, which is more than we had an hour ago. But go ahead, Lynn, and then let's jump into Diablo Canyon, please.
Yeah, in Georgia, in the 2020 elections, and again in 2024, the voting registration pads failed, and I'm putting failed in quotes, because and those voting pads are now owned and operated by Leyendecker, some name, and he is now the owner of all the Dominion voting systems. And those were the pads that failed. So I'm concerned that, they had to take a last minute case to a judge who extended the voting time in Georgia because of those broken voting pads. And it's very easy to wait and just allow at the last minute that, oh, our voting pads failed. Sorry, you can't vote. Or you can have a provisional vote, which will go in the circular file. So I'm very concerned about those voting pad registration systems.
Let's raise this in January. Very, very good point. Very important. The Dominion has now been renamed Liberty, which is the same name as the Trump son's crypto company. But we're going to take up this all in January 5th, 2026, and that will be our major work. And Lynn, if you can raise that again in January, that would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ray Lutz. Really appreciate it. And we're going to move on. I want to do an intro.
Thank you.
Come again. Oh, stay with us because you also had your help shut San Onofre. I want to point out, by the way, that what you see behind me, not you on radio, but what you see behind me is the outdoor classroom at my former college in Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. And that outdoor classroom is currently covered with snow, and it's like 1 degree. So thank heaven for good weather where we are. Okay, Steve, I want to do a brief break and create another standalone show here. And we're joined by some truly great experts. So, hey everybody, this is Harvey Wasserman. I'm introducing you to the California Solartopia show. We are going to focus for a full hour now on the issues of the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant in California and the general surrounding, especially economic issues about nuclear power in the United States and worldwide. We're joined by the great Linda Seeley with Mothers for Peace in San Luis Obispo. John Geisman, a tremendously important attorney in the whole utility field in California, is with us. Carl Grossman, one of the great godfathers of the anti-nuclear movement. Kevin Camps in Michigan from Beyond Nuclear is with us. Ron Leonard, one of the godfathers of the renewable energy industry. And I believe Robert Freeling is either with us or will join us, a great energy expert from California as well. Anyone else I'm missing, please introduce and let us know. But we are now in the middle of a governor's race. I just saw the polls today have been published. We do have a primary system where the top two, regardless of party in the primary, get on the ballot, and it's conceivable that we would have two Republicans running for governorship in California. The current frontrunner is Katie Porter, a congresswoman, former congresswoman. Myla Reisen and I both met her and had a brief and not all that fruitful discussion about Diablo Canyon, but we have the people who are really in the know about what's going on with Diablo Canyon and the money situation there. John Geisman and then Linda Seeley, if you can give us the lowdown on where we stand in terms of the economics of Diablo Canyon. And the question is, in this governor's race, would it be possible for a candidate to argue that shutting Diablo Canyon will save hundreds of millions of dollars. I've just forwarded you a piece that was in the San Francisco Chronicle. This kind of briefly skirts by at least one assessment that California would save $500 million per year if Diablo was shut, or maybe I misrepresented that. But John Geisman and then Linda Seeley, can we jump ahead with this discussion? John, you're a great attorney based in Oakland, and you've been with us forever.
I would strongly commend that article from the San Francisco Chronicle to anybody looking for a quick summary of the last 4 or 5 years on Diablo Canyon. John Emsweiler broke the Enron story for the Wall Street Journal 25 years ago and has come out of retirement to write up the Diablo Canyon saga. And I think without being too explicit, he points to a fair amount of corruption and frankly governmental collapse that created the conditions under which the extended operations have been allowed. Public Utilities Commission has just approved its second annual forecast proceeding for PG&E. They approved $383 million of above market costs. The prior year, which had been the first year, it was $723 million of above market costs. That sums to about $1.1 billion of above market costs that the Public Utilities Commission has rubber stamped. I think, in fairness, you need to add to that number the $1.475 billion that the state legislature and governor threw at PG&E in the form of a so-called zero interest forgivable loan. Right now, we're on a track where by 2030, PG&E, using their numbers, is likely to cost between $4.5 and $5 billion above market prices for the privilege of running this plant for an extra 5 years.
It's staggering. What's wrong with these people? You're talking about $5 billion to keep online. And let me make it clear. John Geisman and Linda Seeley, Kevin Camps, Carl Grossman, Ron Leonard, if Diablo Canyon were to shut, would we Californians, and I live in LA, would we Californians save $5 billion?
I don't think there's any question about that. And like I emphasize, I'm talking about PG&E's numbers. I'm not talking about an objective appraisal, which is pretty hard to get right now, given the level to which the state agencies have joined the bandwagon. But using PG&E's numbers themselves, you're talking about close to $5 billion.
So PG&E is, for those of you who don't know, by the way, this is a national issue. I understand we're talking about a plant in California, but Diablo Canyon is upwind of the entire continent of the United States. And so God forbid anything happen at Diablo Canyon, it goes all across the country. You know, you couldn't position a nuclear plant better to carpet North America with radiation than Diablo Canyon. And it also is the poster child of the anti-nuclear movement in many ways. That article, by the way, in the San Francisco Chronicle, Steve, if you can throw it in the chat, it wrongly stated that the first big anti-nuclear demonstrations in the United States were there at Diablo Canyon. In fact, they were at Seabrook, New Hampshire. I was at both places, and I know which one came first. So, but you know, the bottom line here, and let me make this clear: are you saying that if I run for governor, Sonny Wasserman runs for governor, I could say that I will shut Diablo Canyon and it will save California ratepayers $5 billion to do so? Is that accurate?
That $5 billion is a 5-year number.
Right. But, you know, 5 years between friends, what's 5 years? You know, I'm 80. So, okay. Thank you, John Geisman. Couldn't be better. Linda Seeley, you glow in the dark. You're 10 miles or so from Diablo Canyon. Your Mothers for Peace, which we should put in the chat, has been on the case for 50 years, even though you're, you know, only started when you were 12, but nonetheless, what do you say about this?
First, before I say anything, I want to introduce to everybody Linda Parks, another member of who is here on the call. There she is, because I want to get her input too. What was the question, Harvey?
What do you say about the economics of Diablo Canyon, which you've been trying to shut for 50 years?
I think that John Giesman to me is the most believable expert of all of the experts around on the cost of Diablo Canyon. So I would take it from his lips that whatever he says is right.
Okay.
Mothers for Peace, actually, our remit is not, we have done a little bit with cost, but ours has always focused on safety. Our issues with Diablo. And if you notice that article in the Chronicle today, it was a great article, but it never talked about the radioactivity at all. It never talked about,
it was a long article, even just on the money, and everybody, I have people here vehemently tell me in LA, don't talk about the radiation, just talk about the money. So,
and that's exactly what is the going meme these days, that, oh, well, nobody cares about radiation, forget about it. Nobody
who cares if we die? I mean, what the heck? It's the money that counts.
About, the cracking reactor vessel. Now, you can't really grab an audience like that. The only way you can grab an audience is through their pocketbooks. I beg to differ. I mean, maybe it is true that people will only talk about their pocketbooks, but what we have had perpetrated upon us is a magnificent snow job, con job, like no other I've ever seen in my youthful life decades, that people no longer think that there's anything wrong with radiation. And this town that I live in, San Luis Obispo, we have 2 full-time cancer treatment centers here. But nobody ever questions that. Oh, how come everybody's got cancer?
Right. God.
Do you think it could have anything to do with the exposure to radiation that people have been getting for the past 80 years around this country?
Right. Well, in Central California, you can get chemo at the gas station. Linda Parks, and then Kevin Camps, and then Carl Grossman. Linda, are you as close to Diablo as Linda Seeley?
Yes, I am. And then from a safety perspective, obviously, it was built on an active earthquake fault, something that they didn't know at the time when they were building it. And then you look at no place to store nuclear waste, so it's on site. And just like when you do any infrastructure projects these days, like you build a dam, you don't think about what's the cost of taking that dam down in the future. And the same thing with the nuclear waste. No one is really calculating the costs to future generations and others of dealing with tons of nuclear waste just at this one facility at Diablo Canyon. So that there are those concerns specifically related to finances, but we also found out recently, because it's going to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Central Coast one, that it also released tritium daily. And our experts have said that more tritium is being released from Diablo than from Fukushima.
Oh.
We know that the Coastal Commission just approved the allowance for continuing the plant even for 20 more years, even though they know that it's with the cooling system, it's taking in all this marine life and essentially killing so much marine life. It's equivalent to, I think it was 14 acres of ocean waters every year. So it's just,
Linda, 14 square miles.
I'm sorry, yes, square miles.
Square miles.
Yeah.
Well, Diablo Canyon has been described as the #1 predator, marine predator on the Pacific
Yeah.
coast. And I've been, you've been having earthquakes in Northern California now for a while. I'm terrified. I mean, and by the way, you said that Diablo is built on an active earthquake fault. Aren't there a dozen of them that were Diablo surrounding Diablo? It's like a spider web there. Linda, you're both fantastic. Thank you. Let's go to Kevin Camps. Kevin is, I know you've been on this issue, but you're working on Palisades. Do the numbers that are being calculated here, $5 billion over budget, over market in 5 years, does that resonate at all with Palisades in Michigan?
Yes, I've begun to put some things in the chat. The similarities between Palisades and Diablo. And like Linda said, mostly thus far, I've put in safety-related risks at both that are similar, ironically, even though they're on separate sides of the continent. But in terms of money, what I'm most familiar with are the bailouts happening at Palisades. A grand total thus far of $3.52 billion in mostly federal, but also state bailouts at Palisades related to the restart of what is a 60-year-old reactor. And I say that because it was designed in the mid-1960s, ground was broken in 1967, fired up in 1971, had a problem-plagued operational history for more than 50 years. It was a lemon from the get-go. There was actually a major lawsuit filed by the utility company against the builder, California-based Bechtel, that resulted in an out-of-court settlement, and then they just fired it up. They didn't fix anything. And so that's what they've gotten thus far, $3.52 billion in public bailouts. But they've asked for more than $8 billion related to the restart alone. And the restart is unprecedented. I mean, I include Diablo 1 and 2 as zombie reactors because they were supposed to have shut. So they're past their life, so they're zombies. But Palisades is in a somewhat different category in that it's closed. And so it's a zombie. They're trying to bring it back from the dead. And that precedent at Palisades is being followed by 3 Mile Island Unit 1 and also by Duane Arnold in Iowa. And perhaps other reactors. We're still a bit worried about Kewaunee in Wisconsin, which shut in 2013. And a couple more very ironic zombie reactors would include Indian Point 2 and 3, which Holtec, in its madness a couple months ago, proposed to restart if the state of New York or the federal government will give it $10 billion with a B. And oh, by the way, they've already partially dismantled both of those units. So talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. They're going to get paid $10 billion to rebuild what they've dismantled. So I mentioned more than $8 billion on the restart at Palisades, but at the same time, they want to build 2 so-called small modular reactors there. Another $7.4 billion requested for the so-called small modular reactors, 400 million of which was just awarded by the Trump Department of Energy a couple weeks ago. That was included in the $3.52 billion figure that I mentioned. So these are financial crimes, except they're legal. They're financial crimes that are legal. But the safety is what we're most concerned about at Palisades. They're risking a Chernobyl. They're risking a Fukushima at Palisades. We've dodged many bullets at Palisades over decades. Not everybody has. For example, the most immediate neighbors to the south, it's a 120-year-old resort community called Palisades Park Country Club, 200 cottages on the lakeshore, 50 thyroid cancers diagnosed, alleged, in a part-time population because people are only there in the warm weather, not in the wintertime. There shouldn't be a single thyroid cancer in that community. At peak summertime population, it's 3,000 people. They have 50 thyroid cancers there. So did Palisades have a fuel failure that we never heard about? You get thyroid cancer from radioactive iodine-137, from cesium isotopes. Did they have failed fuel that they forgot to tell us about that's causing these disease rates?
Unbelievable. It's horrifying. Linda Seeley, in your neighborhood, do you have thyroid cancers to report, and then we'll go to, we're joined by Robert Freeling. He'll come after, we'll go to Carl Grossman and then Robert Freeling. And Linda, I know you have to leave.
Joe Mangano did a recent study here, and it's more an increase in leukemia, childhood leukemia, and fetal loss during the first trimester, and birth anomalies, not thyroid cancer.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know, but
Well, we
yeah,
hope you're well, and you should be passing out potassium iodide anyway to everybody in the region. That's for sure.
absolutely. The only way you can get potassium iodide, by the way, is to physically go to the San Luis Obispo County Health Department and register and pick up your pills. They do not send them out to people. They mention them on the back page of the calendar that PG&E sends out to all PO boxes and addresses in the county, in the evacuation area. So most people don't even know. Most people in this county, I would say, don't even know that Diablo Canyon is here. And number two, that nobody knows where to get their medical supplies or their potassium iodide, because most people don't read the back page of the free calendar that comes in the mail to you every year.
Well, we gotta correct that. We got in 2026, we gotta get a campaign going. Get everybody in the Diablo region should be taking potassium iodide. Absolutely.
And
We
then
hope
they
we
actually may become concerned. You know, the residents would become concerned if they did
Right.
that.
Well, let's do that. Let's deal with that, and we'll talk about it again in January next year. And we need to find a governor candidate. There are 6 or 7 Democrats, 2 Republicans. One of them has got to take up this issue in this campaign. So let's see.
Katie Porter was actually opposed to the extension, the SB 846 that extended Diablo by the state legislature for 5 years. She was opposed to it, as was Barbara Lee.
Okay, let's deal with that. That's good. Thank you, Linda. Yeah. Carl Grossman in New York, and then we'll go to Robert Freeling, who's back here in California. Money was a very, very big issue in the prevention of the Shoreham reactors from going online. Can you give us some of the numbers that really took root there and helped shut Shoreham? Carl Grossman is one of the godfathers of the No Nukes movement. He's speaking to us from Long Island, where he just retired from a 3-century career as a professor of journalism. But go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, well, in terms of a catastrophic accident it would be the Shoreham nuclear power plant, the first of 7 to 11 nuclear power plants planned for Long Island, would be immense. It's an island with millions of people, no way to evacuate and so forth. But if anybody is interested in numbers, whether it's Diablo Canyon or other nuclear power plants in the United States, the US government, they'll never do it again, but in 1982, Sandia National Laboratories for the government put together a report called Calculation of Reactor Accident Consequences. The acronym is CRAC-2. And again, looked at every nuke in this country in operation then or proposed to be built. And if you go to Diablo, and I'll put in the chat in 2 minutes, if you go to Diablo, just go under D, peak early fatalities, 10,000 for Diablo Canyon 1, 10,000 for Diablo Canyon 2, peak early injuries, 12,000 for one, or no, 11,000 for one, 12,000 for 2, peak cancer deaths, 12,000 for each of them. And in terms of property damage, again, this is the government, an official report. I'll put the link in a sec.
What year, Carl? What year was
1982. And in 1982 dollars, the property damage from a severe core meltdown accident at Diablo Canyon 1, 155 billion, that's with a B, in 1982 dollars, and two, 158, that's for one, $158 billion for two. I've mentioned before on this call how if you just take a drive, as I have, in the area of the two Diablo Canyon plants, the only other industry in that area is hot spas. I mean, it's a volatile geologically. These two nukes have been built on a absolutely. I mean, there's earthquake faults all around, and I don't mean 20 miles away, 1.7 miles away. These Diablo Canyon plants, I mean, every nuclear power plant in the country and in the world, great. There's crack too. Should be closed tonight. These are catastrophes, disasters waiting to happen. And what you have is a president of the United States who thinks nuclear is great. He's now just as bad as the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is supposed to regulate nuclear power, has been. NRC should really stand for no real concerns. He is moving ahead with executive orders to essentially deregulate nuclear power in the United States, and at the same time doing all he can to discourage safe, clean, green energy technologies led by solar and wind as fast as he can, as complete as he can. We're in the middle right now of a huge new nuclear push predicated, I mean, this is the excuse, predicated on the claim that nuclear power is necessary to deal with climate change, when in fact, the nuclear fuel cycle, mining, milling, enrichment, is highly carbon intensive, and nuclear plants themselves emit carbon. In fact, carbon-14, a radioactive form of carbon. We got to shut them down and shut them down as quick as we can.
And it's amazing that nobody ever mentions the small detail that atomic reactors operate at 300 degrees centigrade. And so they eliminate the middleman in heating up the planet. They don't need to emit carbon to heat up the planet. They just flat out do it. And one of the things about Diablo Canyon is it's been in violation of the Federal Clean Water Act for decades because it dumps hot water directly into the Pacific Ocean. And one of the things about the deal, we want to operate off the master plan that was devised by Jerry Brown, or with Jerry Brown's cooperation in 2016-18. And 2 years were spent on this thing. It was approved 67-1 by the California legislature. That was the vote in 2018 to approve the master plan phase out at Diablo Canyon. And one of the reasons the PG&E agreed was that they were in violation, and still are, of course, of the Federal Clean Water Act by dumping so much hot water into the ocean, and they were required to build cooling towers. And so by agreeing to shut, they said, well, okay, we won't have to build the cooling towers. And now that they're back operating, they haven't built the cooling towers. Classic bait and switch. Absolutely insane. We have another, thank you, Carl. We have another great expert, compadre of John Giesman, is Robert Freeling with us. Robert, John Giesman has, with Linda Seeley's approval, has estimated that continuing to operate Diablo for the next 5 years will cost California ratepayers, including me, $5 billion. Is that a figure that you're in agreement with?
Well, any cost figure that is put out for nuclear power is usually the bare minimum.
Right. It's an optimistic assessment.
And nuclear power plants can usually be expected to cost significantly more. And we've already heard what can happen if a disaster occurs at that plant. And that would dwarf the so-called operating or continued delivery of power to the power grid by Diablo Canyon Nuclear Plant. So that's the environmental costs that you just brought up. That's actually quite important. You mentioned global warming. A lot of people don't realize that most of the warming that happens because of global warming actually goes into the oceans. And about 90% actually of global warming is actually going into the ocean. So when you cook the oceans, you're actually, what you said is quite correct. You're doing the damage of global warming, a good chunk of it. And when you cook the oceans, you're not only killing fish, you're also releasing carbon dioxide from the ocean. So some of that analysis is correct. But the estimates that were publicly released for financial cost of just continued operation were about $1.2 to $1.3 billion per year. That was by the Energy Commission. That does not include sets of other costs. For example, the additional costs it will take to dispose of the nuclear waste. Nuclear wastes are put into a separate pot of money, as are environmental damages, as are any potential disaster that could happen, as are any potential breakage that it could occur, unforeseen costs. So when we say what's the total bill, there is no real total bill for a nuclear power plant. It's a potentially bottomless pit of risk and series of costs that will be imposed on the ratepayers one way or another, even if it's not in the quote unquote official tally. Now, Tern accused PG&E of
the Utility Reform Network, or in California, it's
accused PG&E of failing to disclose hundreds of millions of dollars a year in expenses. And Mr. Giesman also, during the proceeding, I was involved in that, revealed that some of the costs were being hidden as well. And when you look at the cost of the PG&E displays that's available to the public, there are data tables that show line items year by year of different costs. And the cost, for example, of the nuclear fuel, what the public sees is just a black marker equivalent of electronic ink that covers over the annual cost of nuclear fuel. The public is not allowed to know that cost because it's considered a commercial secret to help make PG&E more cost competitive, quote unquote. Of course, it doesn't do anything like that because it's not a cost competitive resource. The other thing is that everybody is under standing orders, that is to say, the utilities, the community choice aggregators, the direct access providers, to fully replace the power of Diablo Canyon. And they have all agreed to do that. They've made extensive plans. They've worked on these plans for years. At this point, there are two parts that need to be replaced. There is the reliability, and the reliability has been fully replaced with batteries at this point. The state determined years ago under a study done by the CPUC that all you need to provide full reliability to the grid is 4 hours of battery storage. There's no need for 24-hour baseload. And this was formally demonstrated by PG&E a decade ago. They showed that when you have a state resource grid with high amounts of renewable energy, the amounts that are required by law, that you would have only certain hours of the day a need for most of Diablo Canyon's output, but almost never all of its output, because solar and wind vary over the course of the day and Diablo Canyon does not. And that's why you only need 4 hours of storage to do backup. Now, we have 14,900 megawatts, according to CAISO, the state grid operator, of battery storage, almost all of which has been built in the last 5 years, almost all of which is 4-hour storage. Diablo Canyon's only 2,000 megawatts and change. So we've replaced Diablo Canyon over and over and over again at the cost of billions of dollars. Every thousand megawatts of batteries, probably about $1 billion. So we probably spent somewhere close to $14 or $15 billion of ratepayer money to quote unquote replace the reliability of Diablo Canyon. So that's one cost. Another cost is the fact that when there was an outage 5 years ago, which is part of what triggered this whole idea that we quote unquote need Diablo Canyon, there was actually mismanagement of the marketplace that CAISO runs. they had planned.
Robert, let me jump in very quickly.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
This is the California Solartopia show, and we're gathering to discuss the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant. We are broadcast in many places, including the Progressive Radio Network and the Pacifica Radio Network. And we are talking with Robert Freeling here about the economics of atomic power. And we'll proceed now for another half hour. Thank you so much, everybody. John Geisman will go to you next, and then we'll take a couple of calls from Steve and from Ruth. Go ahead, Robert. What I want to know is, why can't we produce a definitive document that lays all this out for the governor's race so that we can show without any dispute whatsoever what an economic disaster is, and why we absolutely don't need Diablo Canyon, and you know, aside from all the radioactive, the ecological, the seismic, the safety issues, why are we putting out $5 billion to keep this thing going when it could shut tomorrow? Go ahead.
That's a great question. So I was in the room, in the hearing room, almost a decade ago, when PG&E took an oath that their testimony to the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And in their testimony, their written testimony, they did formal analysis that said that the state does not need this plant, they don't need this plant, and that it represents excessive cost. It doesn't fit into the new world that is increasingly renewable energy, and that is their sworn testimony. So there's extensive documentation. This analysis was done again more recently by the CPUC. It was done in order to plan long-term how much resources we need. They also have shown that. And then in addition, the Energy Commission did reports which showed that there were adequate replacement resources for the plant, but they put in hypothetical scenarios where there could be a shortfall. And they manufactured shortfalls in the analysis by excluding resources that exist on the grid or that will exist. Or they would raise the bar far above what the state's actual standard for reliability is. The state requires in every month that every provider of electricity has to have up to the full amount of electricity they need for maximum demand, plus an extra reserve at this point of 17% more than the maximum. And we're paying for that. So this is another pot of money of super reliability that we have. So there are multiple documents that show we don't need this plant already there.
Well, we have to have a politically powerful document to throw into the governor's race. That's got to happen. John Geisman, what do you think about Robert's and all the other analyses that we've heard here? This is a great gathering of people really at the forefront of changing our energy picture.
I think Robert's right on the mark. I think he was right on the mark several years ago at the PUC proceeding. The process, though, is not oriented to accepting factual information. And I'm not persuaded that the political primary is likely to be determined on energy policy. I think a much more compelling message here, although it's a fairly negative one, is again along the lines of the article in the Chronicle today. Dig into the level of intellectual and regulatory and financial corruption that laid the foundation for this 5-year extension of Diablo Canyon's operations. Contemplate what will be involved for the next governor when PG&E comes back and says, you know, we've got an NRC license to let us run until 2045. You're in favor of that, aren't you? Think of all the AI that we're going to need to have power plants like Diablo Canyon to fuel. You're in favor, aren't you, Governor? And I think, as your experience, Harvey, with Katie Porter indicated, and Katie Porter, as Linda said, opposed the SB 846 bailout. She's reluctant to take a position going forward. I think in a 6-person race, everybody's reluctant to take a position. But if you focus on the number of palms that have been greased, where the money came from, where the money went, the level of misrepresentation and actual deception that PG&E engaged in, I think now you're talking about a currency that politicians running for office may be able to relate to.
Well, let's hope so. Steve Caruso and then Ruth have had hands, and go ahead, Steve, and then we'll
Yeah,
go to Kevin, Linda, and Carl.
I did a back in the napkin sketch of what for like a month of how much radiation or heat from these plants, 400 plants around the world, affects the atmosphere. The atmosphere is only usable about 3 miles high, and you got 8 billion people using that atmosphere, plus all the animals. The amount of heat these things are putting out. And right now, here where I am, it's freezing cold. Okay. Okay. Tomorrow it's going to 34. It's below, it's like 20, if that, right now. Thursday it's going to be 54. This is a wild swing that's just getting worse and worse because there's heat pushing up from one area, pushing cold down on the other. And this is all exacerbated by fossil fuel use and nuclear power plants. And that's
right. And this other nonsense that nuclear somehow fights global warming. It just blows my mind. They totally disregard the fact that these reactors operate at 300 degrees centigrade. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they eliminate the middleman there.
What about the farmers around these plants? You know, when they get routine radioactive releases radiating their crops, and then we're all supposed to eat them like nothing's going on. And this is perhaps what happened with tobacco in the 50s and 60s with all these cancer cases. They sit out in the field all day long. They shoot off these nuclear bombs out in Nevada or whatever, and then it goes all over the country, and they say, oh, tobacco causes cancer. Could be true. But, you know, anybody do isotope studies on the tobacco leaves? I doubt it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Californian Ruth Strauss, and then we'll go back to Linda, Kevin, and Carl. Ruth?
Yeah, hi. So I'm a physician, but I couldn't write myself for enough Prozac after the hearings that I've attended. Two remote ones for the CPUC, and Harvey got me onto this, which I'm so forever grateful. I testified there. 99% of the people for those two hearings were against nuclear and also against PG&E and the government for rescinding the credits that people would get for solar. That was bad enough that the CPUC just turned around and voted completely against what was being said. But then recently there was a California Coastal Commission, and my heart broke for Linda Seeley because I would say 75 to 80% of the people that testified at that hearing were talking about, oh, what a beautiful, you know, place Diablo Canyon is. And, oh, you know, the deer are running around. I guess that is Rudolph's red nose. But anyway, and it's just a wonderful park. And, you know, and it provides all these jobs and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, my question is, what in the world can we do? I mean, this is just horrible.
Well, that's why, you know, the numbers on the money I think are critical, and you know, these earthquakes are just terrifying. You know, the only nuclear reactor in the United States that's been damaged twice by earthquakes is Perry in Ohio. Who'd have thunk it? But you know, here we have a dozen seismic faults right around the plant, and then 45 miles from the San Andreas. The earthquake that destroyed Fukushima was 90 miles away. So, you know, it's and another issue that's come up, of course, is that Musk and Doge really, whatever value the Nuclear Regulatory Commission ever had was completely negated by the Doge attack. And so here we have atomic reactors that are uninsured, and all the reactors in the United States are essentially uninsured. There's a minuscule federal fund, but beyond that, nothing, and unregulated. I mean, what are we doing here? It's insane. Linda Parks and Kevin, and then Carl Grossman again, and then Ron Leonard has joined us to talk about the dimension on the renewables and what's been done to renewables in California. So go ahead, Linda Parks, please.
And just pointing out that they are actually testing a capsule that they pulled out to see the amount of embrittlement at Diablo. And those tests are supposed to be available in April to see. Someone posted here that it is one of the most embrittled plants in the nation, which means it's most subject to cracking if they have to suddenly put in a lot of cooling water. So we're looking forward to seeing what those tests are, because you just feel like hopefully common sense will take over. And then the other thought, just that California was reliant on a loan from a grant from the Department of Energy, right? Over $1 billion.
Right.
And they're
$1.4 billion.
And now with Trump, they're not being as forthcoming with the money. And you would think with the California budget the way it is now that they would prioritize victims of Palisades fire and such over giving money to PG&E.
Wow. So that I hadn't heard. The $1.4 billion to $1.4 billion that was supposed to come from the feds is now up for grabs. John Geisman, do you know about that?
A little worse than that. The legislature thought it was going to be 1.4, so they put 1.4 of state tax money up. PG&E the very next day applied for a grant from the feds for 1.1 billion. So within 24 hours, we're $300 million underwater. John Laird, the senator that had made that statement on the floor, has been flustered about it for the last 3.5 years and is trying to figure out what to do about it. He suggested at a hearing a couple of months ago, maybe PG&E ought to pay that back. PG&E applied for a grant in the Biden administration. They applied for 1.1. They got 659. So there was a degree of shortfall before Trump even came into office. We don't know what the Trump administration, Department of Energy, is going to do to the remaining 659. The state got taken to the cleaners, and it got taken to the cleaners by an extraordinarily deceptive utility, which for a while had more felony convictions than any other corporation in American history. I think there's been some competition for that on since then.
Well, it was over 90, right? They killed 8 people.
Yes. They've actually killed 113.
Huh? What's that again, John?
Their casualty total is 113.
Oh, God. Yeah, they incinerated 8 people in San Bruno in 2010, and then about over 90 in the Paradise Fire. That was in 2018, right?
Yes, and they just blew up a neighborhood in Hayward several days ago.
And also they managed to destroy the lithium battery setup in Morro Bay or
Moss Landing.
Moss Landing.
And that wasn't a PG&E facility. That was a contractor's facility.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay, Kevin, Carl, and then we have a question from Dave Saltman, and we've been joined by Ron Leonard to talk about renewables. Kevin?
Again, I've been putting a lot of stuff in the chat, so check it out. I'll just briefly remind everybody, if you didn't know already, for the first time, I'll let you know that federal nuclear loan guarantees are very loosey-goosey, despite their huge size, and could be entirely forgiven. They call them loans, but if the company, the recipient, doesn't pay it back, well, okay. So, we've been fighting nuclear loan guarantees since 25 years ago, and we're largely successful at first, but NEARS did an analysis of the Inflation Reduction Act, which showed that the nuclear power subsidies in that bill from 2022 exceeded $380 billion. It was more than the climate mitigation in that bill that was supposedly a climate mitigation bill, although of course nuclear calls itself climate mitigation falsely. But a lot of that 380 plus billion was nuclear loan guarantees. And like I said, they don't necessarily have to be paid back. It's the good faith of the companies. And so when I saw those figures, I was just like, how do we fight this? And we are fighting it. We've been fighting it ever since the bill was passed. But my God, what a giveaway. And I'll remind you that that was President Biden and Energy Secretary Granholm carrying it out. And I put it in the chat. Granholm, former governor of Michigan, was the Wizard of Oz behind the curtains with Newsom and with Whitmer in Michigan. So they hold a lot of responsibility, and they teed it up for Trump, and Trump is just going to town on this stuff now.
But now we're seeing that the federal loan guarantees under Trump, very much in keeping with his business career, may not be actually paid out. Is that right? I mean, they may not even get the federal loan guarantees that they won't have to pay back. Is that right, John?
Oh, I think they'll get them. And I guess what I'd add to what Kevin said, he's got an operator, Holtec, that's never operated a plant before.
Yeah, right.
So ask yourself, if you're looking for somebody to give a loan guarantee to, does it really take a nationwide talent search to find an operator with no experience?
Well, I think what's going to happen is that Trump will probably want the loan guarantees funded through his crypto company, and that will happen next. Maybe he'll take it out of the food stamp program. Carl, you want to jump in, and then Dave Saltman has a hand, and Robert Freeman will come back to you. Oh, Carl, you're muted. Hold on.
Oh,
there. Oh. Hold on here. Carl, I don't know why we have trouble getting there.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to point out, I'm speaking from New York, and it's not just Newsom. The governor of New York, Hochul, is pushing nukes to a fairly well. She wants New York State to be the new capital of a nuclear renaissance. I mean, this is a global nightmare. And I just did a television program, and I put the link in the chat with Thomas Bass. The title of his book, actually a masterpiece of this ghoulish tale of nuclear technology, Return to Fukushima. And he details radioactive fish, and the fishermen can't fish anymore hardly. The dumping of radioactively contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean. I mean, that's Fukushima. And again, a superb book on it. And
what's the book called again?
Return to Fukushima.
Oh my God.
Thomas Bass, an excellent book. And TV show. The TV show, it's Enviro Close-Up. It's broadcast through the United States by Free Speech TV out of Denver. It's on 40 states.
Okay.
And right now and in coming weeks, you can hear Thomas Bass in a half-hour program, or tune in tonight after this.
Well, we'll get him on with you in the new year. Put the link in there, please. But we'll get him on with you in the coming year. Dave Saltman thank you, Carl. Dave Saltman, who's not far from you in Riverdale, Carl, wanted to jump in, and then I want to go to Rob, we'll get to Ron Leonard, who's on with us to talk about renewables, and then Robert Freeman again. This is an amazing session. Really, you guys are the cream of the cream here, so it's great to have you on. Dave Saltman?
Thank you. I am so impressed with the level of intelligence and expertise. I'm frankly embarrassed to be asking such a stupid question, because this is really, really dumb. And I'm sorry. And that's why I took my hand down. I thought, okay, my question is this. If these are going to be paid for by loans, which would mean bonds and so on, it's the ratepayers that are going to end up paying for this, right? It's the citizens. I mean,
well,
so my question is this: where is the incentive to take the ownership of these things away from big business, and from BlackRock and from Vanguard, who are the main owners of the energy industry? There's no incentive for them to give this up. Aren't we? I can't say. Aren't we going to the bathroom in the wind here?
Well, it's even worse than that because the 846, the bill that Gavin Newsom stuffed down our throats here in California, spreads the payments for Diablo Canyon to people all over the state, most of whom don't get any power from Diablo Canyon, including me. I'm a customer of the LADWP. We don't get any juice from Diablo Canyon, but we do get the radiation.
Exactly. And loan guarantee, the best thing that could happen would probably be that they do forgive the loans, because then at least the ratepayers wouldn't have to pay back the excessive interest rates.
Yeah, but then the federal taxpayers are stuck with it.
No, they've been forgiven. It's all done. We took the money and bye-bye, as we used to say in show business. Bye-bye, please.
Yeah, well, it's all shady business. Thank you, David. And David, you're in the elite as well. It's an incredible media career for everybody who's concerned with Dave. So I do want to jump over to Ron Leonard to throw in the renewable dimension here. I mean, in addition to the insanity of extending the life of Diablo Canyon, they're simultaneously waging war on renewable energy in California, which has more than already compensated for what Diablo Canyon allegedly is producing. Ron Leonard, do you want to mention that?
Yeah, let me throw you a Hail Mary on the issue of renewable energy. And the Hail Mary is at the end of this month, in a little over 2 weeks, we're going to see one of the most important credits for individual ratepayers escaping the doubling the price of energy, specifically in California. It doubled, and that is allowing them to put residential solar on their roof and getting a federal tax credit. That's gone at the end of December. Now, obviously, that's not the only way you can put renewable energy in California, and there is going to be a lot more of it coming, but we are showing a really unfair method of punishing ratepayers. And that's what I'd like to focus in on. It's not the geek speak that we love to talk about of power and energy and technology. It's the ratepayer is getting the vertebral shaft in terms of the process of being able to afford to heat their home or cool their home. And there's really not an option, say in California, when the temperature reaches 110 degrees, that you don't cool your house or you could conceivably die. So this is what we need to focus in on. And the thing that proves that is critical is the election that occurred in Virginia, the election that occurred in New Jersey, that got both governors, two ladies elected, and the main issue was the cost of electricity, which jumped exorbitantly. Nationally, by the way, this year, the cost of electricity jumped 7% nationally.
And how much would that go down if we went 100% renewable? We have 2 million solar rooftops in California, and Newsom has just absolutely assaulted the solar industry in California. It's outrageous.
And it's people's really pocketbook that they feel desperately these days, because if you're in California and that temperature rate choice occurs to you in the middle of summer, do you pay the electricity bill in another month, or do you eat and go out and buy groceries? This is the type of choice people are being faced with. It's unfair, it's unwise, it's not rational. And we know the cost of solar is the cheapest form of energy on the earth today. And it's all, I'd say maybe 10%, no, 10 times. Yes, that's the word, 10 times cheaper than nuclear power.
It is 10 times, it's amazing. Solar energy is now 1/10 the cost of nuclear. It's quite amazing. Robert Freeling, as an expert in the California system, and then we're going to go to Maya Reese and Kevin Camps. Thank you for being with us. We have him back at the first of the year. Robert Freeling, does California have sufficient solar and other energy sources to and batteries to protect us from blackouts if we shut Diablo Canyon?
Oh, absolutely. We've already, as I mentioned before, built 14,900 megawatts, according to the state grid operator, CAISO's most recent monthly report of battery storage. And that will provide full reliability for the purposes of the grid. The problem is that Diablo Canyon does not provide reliability. And people think that, oh, Diablo Canyon is reliable but renewable, and the other things they're not. And actually the reverse is the case. And the grid operator, CAISO, did their own analysis of this after 2 short power outages that happened 5 years ago. And they singled out Diablo Canyon as one of the principal causes of the outages that were called, because they were afraid that during a period of strain on the grid, that if Diablo Canyon were to, for some reason, go offline, have an accident or a breakdown or any kind of problem there, that it could it's so big that it could cause a cascading outage through the entire Western power grid. So it's actually a too big to fail resource. And one of the main reasons the governor freaked out about reliability was those outages. I would say it was probably the main reason. But without understanding that the thing that he turned to, Diablo Canyon, for reliability, is the very thing that was responsible for the outages. So what they did, what CAISO did, was ordered the outages in order to create a reserve in case Diablo Canyon went offline. So the customers were used as a backup generator, in effect, for Diablo Canyon. That's what caused those outages. There are rules under which the grid operates, under which they have to discount your largest generator and the largest transmission line from the planning system, just erase them from when they add up all your power plants and figure out how much resources you have to meet demand. And Diablo Canyon is that largest plant. So effectively, it counts for nothing. One of the 2 generators there counts for nothing. Now, when that plant was built back in the 1980s, the state knew that nuclear plants are not a fully reliable type of generation. They provide flat output 24/7. And that's not how demand works. And that's not how need for power works. The need for power fluctuates almost from minute to minute. And nuclear plants cannot safely operate in that way. So they built a pump hydro storage in the mountains that's the size of one of the 2 generators at the nuclear plant. It's 1,200 megawatts that can provide potentially days of backup power. We already paid for that. And they built it the moment that plant was built in order to assure that supply and demand could be continuously met. So that plant's not going away, even if we shut down Diablo Canyon. We have thousands of megawatts of pump hydro storage in addition to the batteries. So the reality is we have close to 20,000 megawatts of storage in the state. So if there's an outage, it's not because there's a shortage of power from generators. The reserve in excess of demand is somewhere at the peak hours or something like 35 to 40%, according to the analysis by the national and regional analysis of the size of the reserve margins. We have way more power than we need to meet the peak demand.
Right. And as Ray Lutz points out, all the nukes have to shut. In fact, I think Unit 2 right now is shut for refueling. They have to shut every I don't know, 16 months or so to refuel. I mean, so they're down. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not as reliable as people think. And of course, if an accident happens, that's not reliable at all.
Yeah, right. We're reliably screwed. This is the California Solartopia show. I'm host Harvey Sonny Wasserman. We've been talking with a tremendous array of experts about the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant and the need to shut it down and the whole nuclear situation across the country. Our producer has been Gary Scott, along with Steve Caruso. Our engineer has been Gary Scott, along with Steve Caruso, producer Myla Reeson. Again, this has been California Solartopia. Thanks for joining us. Produced at the virtual studios of KPFK Los Angeles. And we're going to go now very quickly. We're going to be with this another 11 minutes anyway. We're going to take this up again next year. Our next meeting will be January 5th, 2026, and we will continue our dual focus, as we have for the last almost 6 years, on protecting elections and going to 100% renewable. Myla, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey. Sonny. Um, I'd like to respond to a point that Dave Saltman raised. And, it would be great if it were true, as we would expect, that if we took the generation of electricity away from private entities and put it into the hands of a public entity, that we might have a better system. But the fact is that the Palo Verde nuclear power plant in Arizona is primarily a public entity. SoCal Edison does have a minor stake, so it's sort of a hybrid, but really it's the state of Arizona and a lot of other stakeholders, owners, like the Public Utility Commission in New Mexico, PNM, and the city of Los Angeles, as well as the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Both have a vested interest, along with a grouping of small municipalities around Southern California, are all stakeholders. And back in 2018, the operator, a public servant, we would hope, used millions upon millions of ratepayer dollars to defeat a statewide initiative in Arizona that would have required government buildings to have a certain amount of solar power by, I think they were given a number of years to achieve that goal. But that initiative was defeated primarily because, it's my understanding, because so many millions of dollars were spent to defeat it. And again, it was the public operator of the Palo Verde nuclear power plant that made the decision to allocate millions of dollars of ratepayer money to defeat an initiative that would have required more solar in Arizona.
Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. I'm going to quickly go to Ron Leonard. Steve Caruso, if we can continue until 4:30, that would be great if you can just give us the extra 10 minutes. And we will take this up again next year. I'm going to go to John Geisman after Ron Leonard, and then we'll go up to Lynn Feinerman and Mickey Weeder. Go ahead. Ron Leonard?
Let me give you a little concrete example. It's based on what occurred years and years ago. The first ever handheld scientific calculator was made by Hewlett-Packard, and it used a programming language called reverse Polish notation. So let me give you a reverse Polish notation example. The example is nuclear power plants like the ones we're talking about, Diablo Canyon specifically, curtail. They choke off the ability for clean power. How is that possible? Very simply, that plant cannot be throttled. And with that gigantic chunk of 2 gigawatts of power entering the system, you choke off, you prevent other sources of clean power from entering the grid. You, in fact, cause not only high cost, but unreliable duplicate distributed generation, which is much more reliable than a central plant. Now, why would this central plant be unreliable? It's a nuclear power plant. Well, if you look at the news lately, you'll see predictions of large amounts of tsunamis, waves hitting the coast of California. So this does not make sense in a lot of different ways.
Really, it's unbelievable. Ron, thank you. John Geisman, do you want to comment very quickly on the role that renewables could and should be playing in the on the balance sheet with Diablo Canyon?
Well, I think the curtailment argument is pretty compelling. And when you take Diablo out of the equation, you end up with significantly less curtailment of solar systems. And when I say solar systems, I mean the large commercial solar operators. It doesn't really affect the rooftop solar owner in terms of Diablo Canyon, but it certainly has an impact on the commercial plants. I'd like to add one thing to what Robert Freeling said about the reliability goes down quite a bit if there's an accident. I would add to that, if there's an accident anywhere in the world, because as we've seen with Fukushima and Chernobyl before that, this is an industry which is vulnerable to a worldwide domino chain. Problem in one plant, if it's serious enough, causes shutdowns all around the world, or at least in those countries that are subject to democratic governance. And if you're a reliability planner, you can't rule that out. You need to make some estimate of how has your risk grown because of that global exposure. It's something the state of California doesn't do anymore, but we certainly used to.
Well, that's a brilliant point because, as a matter of fact, Germany, Angela Merkel directly agreed with the anti-nuclear critique to shut the 19 reactors in Germany right after Fukushima. I mean, the very powerful no nukes movement in Germany called for a national demonstration aimed at shutting all the reactors. Angela Merkel said no. And then before their demonstration, Fukushima happened. And she said, well, maybe we should shut the reactors. And they did. So Germany, thank God now, has no active atomic reactors. God forbid there's another major accident. I guarantee you we would have a major tsunami of political uprising to get Diablo shut. Especially
Well, it's one of the reasons why Wall Street has always been hesitant about putting too much money into this industry, and also one of the reasons why they've leaned so hard on Washington, D.C. to provide federal loan guarantees. Nobody wants to take this risk.
But they still don't have insurance.
They certainly don't have insurance.
And now
political
they don't have
insurance,
regulation
though.
either. Now Musk and Trump have done away with any semblance of regulation as well.
That's what he's planning on doing.
So now, if I have a car in California, the equivalent is I no longer have to have insurance and I don't have to get it inspected. So there you go. Okay, Lynn Feinerman, Mickey Leader, and then we're going to go to Robert Freeling. Thank you. Lynn, go ahead.
Yes, I want also to respond to David Saltman. Not a dumb question at all, David. Right after Chernobyl happened, the town of Chernow, led by Ursula Sladek and her husband and a small group of people, took over the energy grid, and completely against the wishes of the mayor of the energy company, they took over the entire energy grid, and they now supply at least 200,000 households in Germany with totally clean energy. And my point here is that we have to do this. Everybody keeps talking about how, the way to make clean energy is to decentralize and to get things away from these gigantic companies that can deceive and deceive. We need to start doing this. We need town by town. Mayor Heidi, hope you're listening. We need town by town to create clean energy grids like Chernow did in Germany. And it set the example for all of Germany. There were many grid takeovers before Angela Merkel finally said, okay, we're going to go along with this.
Right. If you'll put that in the chat so we can get it properly spelled, Lynn, that's great. Thank you very much. Mickey Leader, and then we'll go to back to Robert Freeling. Mickey?
Hi, I just wanted to remind myself, didn't we have a full discussion about individual rooftop solar and getting ourselves disentangled from major grids? I just remember when I was a child in college freshman year, we had an Eastern power grid shut down from Maine down to mid-Atlantic or farther. And it was my excuse why I didn't study for midterms my freshman year.
Well,
there's
California,
one more thing after that, so go
well,
ahead.
very quickly, my experience having, I signed a contract to put solar on my rooftop here in LA, and the company went bankrupt thanks to Gavin Newsom. So I have no contract. I don't have it, but I'm going to do it. But anyway, I was not allowed to. I could actually leave the grid legally, but I could not get an electrician to put the solar panels on my rooftop unless I was hooked up to the grid. So it was a bait and switch here. Yeah, you can have the solar panels, but you can't put them up unless we attach you to the grid.
So in fact, you can't, with that warning that at the end of December, the funding goes away. If you live there now and you don't have any solar on your roof, you can't get them?
I could get it. I won't get the federal tax credit.
Oh, wow. All right. So the other thing, if I'm remembering correctly, didn't we have a very stimulating and eye-opening discussion about Ukraine and all of the energy there, and with all the shit that's going on that they've been bombed out?
Well, the problem with Ukraine is for some reason Ukraine, the government is still tied into building new nuclear plants in Ukraine. And in fact, this giant scandal in Ukraine is nuclear related. All these guys around Zelensky were on the take with the nuclear power plants. Meanwhile, Putin is on. They've come out now. The European Union, the countries in Europe paid $2 billion to put a sarcophagus on top of Chernobyl to prevent, Putin threw a drone into the sarcophagus. It's no longer effective. It does not contain radiation anymore. So there were 15 reactors in Ukraine, 6 in Zaporizhia, and they're all completely, Putin could carpet Europe with radiation with one drone if he hit one of those reactors. We already saw it in Chernobyl. Why in God's name is Zelensky continuing to build nuclear reactors in Ukraine? It's about as psychotic as you can get. So thank you for that, Mickey.
Thank all of you. Every time I listen to this, I keep saying, what drivel is on the major TV stations that you don't get to hear anything that's really important? Really important, so that you can, pull up your big boy pants and get moving, protect us.
I'm wearing shorts, but we are back at, we're almost, we're going to go to 4:30 California time. John Giesman, Carl, everybody, Robert, Ray Lutz was also involved at San Onofre. We didn't talk about San Onofre. Thank you. You guys are really great. Please come back January 5th. We're really we have to produce, I believe, we have to produce the definitive document that we enter into this race, whatever candidate, whatever it's worth. We have to have the absolute document. This, as a Chronicle article, is mind-boggling. So we have to, dot some I's and add a little more. As Carl knows how to do it, he's having been helped do a Shoreham down. We shut Seabrook 1, Montague 1 and 2. I mean, we do have a San Onofre. I would like to know, actually, this would be an interesting paper. How much money did Sacramento save by shutting Rancho Seco? On June 5th, 1989, Carl, Scott Denman predicted this. He made a public speech, Scott Denman, at a rally at Seabrook, predicting that they would shut San Onofre, and they did. Rancho Seco. How much money has Sacramento saved in the last 40 years having shut Rancho Seco? It would be a great calculation. How much has Southern California saved having shut San Onofre? Robert Freeman, you ever done a calculation, or John Giesman, on how much money's been saved with those reactors shut?
Yeah, so I didn't do the calculation, but at the time, the city had done an analysis which showed how much money. I don't remember what the figure was. It was many, many millions of dollars that they would save by shutting it down. And the people voted to shut it down.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the great photographs of our era is the Rancho Seco nuclear plant, which is shut, surrounded by solar panels, which are working.
Yeah.
They have been working. So the question is, How much can we save? We've got San Onofre now. We got Rancho Seco, Humboldt. I mean, we do have a track record here in California of shutting reactors. I mean, I'd love to know how much we saved at Montague, Massachusetts. That's how I got involved. It came in 1973. They were going to build 2 nukes. We stopped them. We must have saved them, 20, $30 billion by not wasting their money on this. John, has anybody ever done an actual calculation on money saved?
I've not seen the numbers, but I would put up either Vogel or the Sumner plant as pretty good comps.
Well, there's a VC Summer where they blew $9 billion and got nothing but a hole in the ground. Is that Rancho Seco, Steve, that you just showed?
Rancho Seco is only 1 unit, so it's significantly
that was
significantly less.
2 towers.
Yeah, so there is a bit more of that story about Rancho Seco, which is that there were 2 popular votes taken. And they were actually given a year between those votes for SMUD to fix the nuclear plant, during which time I think they spent $100 or $200 million in repairs, and the repairs failed. The people who ran the plant were so smart about it that they thought they'd start up the plant just before the election happened in June. They started it up. They weren't supposed to do so because they didn't have permission from the voters to do it, because they were going to show everyone right before the election how wonderfully their nuclear plant worked. And they turned on the plant, and what people often don't realize is to run a nuclear plant, you need a backup generator in case the plant fails, in order to shut down the plant properly. So that there's reliable power when they shut off the plant. Well, the backup generator failed during their little stunt, so they couldn't turn off the plant. And that got in the paper. And then a few weeks later, the people vote to shut down finally the plant, but not before they had spent, I don't know, at least $100 or $200 million in repairs. So if you decide that you're going to keep experimenting, let's see what happens if we keep the thing on, then more money is just going to get sunk into the thing.
We gotta produce the definitive document on this. Listen, this has been an incredible session here. Unlike any other, we still have 46 people with us after 2 hours. Somebody out there is doing a lot of Adderall or Ambien, and that was anybody who saw the beginning of Saturday Night Live said there was a race in Trump's mind between Adderall and Ambien. But anyway, this has been an incredible. John Geisman, thank you. Robert Friedling, Carl Grossman. So many, Ron Leonard, so many others for being with us through this. This is going to be a great document, and we need to produce the definitive document. So this has been the California Solartopia show at PRN, Progressive Radio Network, Pacifica Radio Network, from the produced by Myla Reeson, engineered by Steve Caruso and Gary Scott. We're going to be back January 5th, 2026, for a full race to the finish line to protect the 26th election and to shut Diablo Canyon and all these other nuclear plants before they blow each other up. And I will be 80 if we make it that far, and I will be Sonny, no longer Slogo. I cannot claim to be a ball player, but here we are. And it's SUNNY to distinguish me from Sonny Corleone, so I can go through toll booths. Everybody, Carl Grossman, it's so great to have you with us. Everybody, we'll see you next year. Thank you, Steve Caruso, Mike Hurst, everybody in California, Solartopia, and around the world. Protect 26 election, denuclearize this planet, and go 100% Solartopian. And, everybody, we love you. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
It's Happy New Year. And the number is $120 billion over the next 30 years could be saved by renewable energy in California. It's in the chat.
Wow.
Well, let's do it. And Rob Reiner and Mrs. Reiner is partner there. Thank you.